My name is Carolyn Stevens.
And your role, I guess, in all this.
I'm the director of this show, and I'm the one, after being hired, that started this program 7 years ago. I've been doing this kind of thing for 20 years. I started at Center Point Theater. Well, it was Rogers Memorial at the time.
In Centerville.
In Centerville. So,
Yeah.
And then the Terrace Playhouse. And then I was on my own for 7 years. And performed at the amphitheater in Ogden, also the Union Station. We were friends with the ghosts there. We had great times. And then here for the school district, this is our 7th year.
Yeah.
And I pulled my daughter along, so sometimes it's a team effort. My
Yeah.
daughter wrote the script we're performing this year after I had an idea of how to do a simple show so I didn't have to sew costumes.
There you go.
And it's been quite a fun experience since then.
So maybe tell us a little bit about the program itself. What is the Ogden Summer Theater program? How did this happen? And is this, you said this is 7th year, so is this always been something that you've done, or did it exist before?
Right.
Or, yeah.
So myself, when I was on my own, well, and at the Terrace Theater, the former owner, the late Beverly Olson, wanted me to have a name. And so I ran her children's program. So I called it Lights Up. So then when I went out on my own, because they didn't want children's theater anymore, when she passed away, then her daughter took over, and they just wanted to simplify things.
Yeah.
So I took my group and had a studio, but I would have to perform in other places. It was still Lights Up, and I'm still licensed by the state as Lights Up Theater Arts Academy. So when they hired me, I still kept my same philosophy and ways of doing a program, and they keep letting me come back every year.
Cool.
So we built it from, our first year we probably had a little over 20 kids, maybe 25. We did Peter Pan. And then every year it's just kept growing, but this is by far our biggest year with 59 children.
Wow. And do you think that's because of the show, or you think it's because they've seen it in the past, or why do you think it's such an increase this year?
I think it's both. We've had a lot of returns. Some of the kids that are in this show have done it for 5-6 years.
Wow.
Now, some that are now getting old enough to go get jobs weren't in it this year, but they come visit during the day because they can't keep away. They form really strong bonds. They do learn a lot about theater because I do an entire show as if they were in a show. I don't skimp. So sometimes I'm told I work too hard and I do too much set. And I said, but the kids don't get the real experience if we just do cardboard and stand at a mic. Anyone who does that for the program, I can't call that a theater program.
Right. So this is, you produce an entire show within what amount of time?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
When I was on my own, I did it like in 9 weeks because you just need that time. Kids come and go because they have to go to camp. They have to go on a vacation.
Yeah, summer. Yeah.
We have to take time out for the 4th of July. That is, but I don't know how I've done that for 20 years, but it's a head breaker because then you finally get the whole cast together on opening day.
Yeah.
And you have to fill in for those that were gone, and if they don't go to the stage manager to get all their blocking, then they hold up because now we have to fit them in anyway. But we end up doing it. We have the theater miracle, which is opening day. We go, where was that in rehearsal?
Yeah.
They were listening. Wow.
Lady Fruit Fruit? No? I thought you liked the raspberry scrumptious tea. Well, I like it. I'll drink it. How fine the weather is, don't you think, Baron von Scaliva? Yes, I know it's nothing compared to your lava home in Dragonia, but it has been a warm summer for Amyton. Excuse me if there aren't enough goblins for your liking. You allow such riffraff at my parties. Will I blame them? No, I won't. You just scared them off from me, wouldn't you? Such a mighty hunter you are. Yes, Mountain Smelantine, I remember you don't approve of hunting. Oh, it looks like you're running short on biscuits, little bunny no-face. For having no face, you certainly are a gluttonous little bun, but aren't you? Aren't you? Answer me! Shut up, Flip Cuddles. I've had it with your parliamentary monarchy and demand for individual rights. You all belong to me, and don't you forget it. Who wants sugar with their tea?
What do you think in a larger sense, what do you think this does for the kids? Why do you think the school district is so behind the program?
Well, we're the only ones who make money. And so we do get funding, but we also run ourselves with ticket sales. This year we're doing like a raffle because all the proceeds will go back into the program.
Oh, okay.
And then that way, we'd like to be able to afford a musical someday, but then a musical does take more time.
Right.
So that would elongate. So we have not done a musical in these 7 years. One reason I want to focus on the acting. Okay, so what was the question again? Dang.
What do you think this does for the kids that are involved?
I know that it creates very strong bonds and friendships. And one thing I've learned in the 30 years I've been doing theater, once you've done a show with someone, you are connected for life. You see them 10 years later, remember when we were in that show? Hey, you were, and then it's like yak, yak, yak. So it's a very deep connection. You have to they have to learn to rely on each other and not just think about themselves.
Yeah.
If they miss a cue, they've heard it for someone else. It's not just about them. So that's a really big lesson. How to accept people for their differences, because on stage, that's what makes the difference.
Yeah.
We don't mind if you look different, if you're chubby, if you're skinny, if you have a lisp. It makes you more interesting, and it adds to the show. And so then they begin to learn that they don't have to be ashamed of themselves. They don't have to fear. So many of them, I tell them a really great story on faith, how you just have to do it from an experience my brother gave me. And it's like, do it or I'm leaving. And so I have to cross the stream by myself. And I finally just did it because I wanted to go with him. And so when you think you can't do it, just do it, because you can. And I let them know, I believe in you. There's no way that I think you can't do this. It's an impossibility. And so eventually they believe me. And then I say, you're going to be different at the end of the show than you are today. And you will be a better actor. And you will know more, and you will have a better insight into other people than you do today. That's my goal.
Yeah.
But to discipline them, not just come up and be crazy.
How about this particular show? What, for our last question, tell me about this particular show, why you're excited about it, and what you'd like to see happen this week.
Well, I've been hearing a lot about how there's electronics. Nobody plays anymore. We grew up playing.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the 60s and high school in the 70s. So when I was a little kid, our block, all us kids in Southern California, we got together and played. And we played everything. And sometimes it was all the kids, sometimes just a group of us. We played house. We had our street with flaws in it that became the bases for us to play kickball. When the cars came, we all moved aside. When the cars left, we got back into position. And we had a blast. And so I started thinking about some of the stories we had growing up. And my brother, who's a real pickle, oh, I wish I had time to tell you some stories about him. And I said, why don't we have a play about playing and what happens to kids when they get together and they have to try to work it out. And the thing is, with us growing up, we could even get in fights, but then 2 days later, we're knocking at the door, can someone play? And so we didn't hold grudges. We got to learn about each other. So, and there's also the acceptance in here of a little sister with the big brother. And how she's going to be herself, dang it, but then he learns what is so special about her, and the other kids do. So then they realize they don't have to let anybody out. Everyone has a contribution. So we have kids that get together, they decide they're going to play King Arthur. But then when the girls show up as knights as well, the boys go, you can't be the knights, you have to be the girls. Well, we don't want to be the girls, there's only so many girls in Camelot. And they didn't want to be just the backups. So they have a fight. So the girls go, we're going to go play pirates then. So they cut a middle down the park, and the one side is the pirates, and the one side is Camelot. Well, there's some girls that want to stay in Camelot because they like being girls. And then they have this big fight back and forth. And then the little sister comes along with her animals that she can make her stuffed animals that she can make come alive, and they sabotage. And they make these two fight thinking they're doing it to each other. Then they find out it's not them, it's this little squirt. It's a great ending. And so then one of the kids that plays, Merlin in Camelot, he comes along with her and finds out she's crazy magic. Her imagination's crazy. So then he sticks up for her, and so all of a sudden the brother sees the animals alive. And it hits, he goes, "This is what it's like in your world?" She goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I had no idea." And then the animals drop. And then they shared a moment in their brain. It's brilliant. I'm sorry, it just is. My daughter did a great job. So we pulled from her childhood to my childhood. I have a reference where a kid defects over to the pirates because they're having more fun. And he puts a little hobo thing and he takes a chicken, which is a reference to my brother and something he did when he was 8, when he ran away from home. And so that's a reference for him.
Yeah.
He was Hobo Rick. So.
Those little Easter eggs in there.
Yes.
When you were telling me the story, it brought to mind what the Utah Shakespearean Festival is doing this summer. They're doing Merchant of Venice, but all the parts are played by women. Right. So
There used to be men that could only do it. Oh, great.
Yes. And it just, I think that's a fun message that we're teaching them right now. So.
Okay, this you can cut out if you want, but I directed Merchant of Venice.
Oh, okay.
And we had a thing with the cast where I ended up having to play Portia. The last 3 performances, I got pneumonia after that. But then there was a guy who was waiting for an adoption, and he was one of the princes, and he was a friend of, the guy.
Yeah.
So I was Tubal, was my name in the show. And I had to dress up like a man because he got the baby, so now I have to fill his part. And so I bearded up, and I put the hat, and I put, a man thing. I was walking around the theater, and my dear friend, they didn't know it was me.
Yeah.
And so I go out on stage, this one guy comes up later, and he says, "I did not know that was you until you pronounced a word a certain name, or a certain way."
Yeah.
And then he goes, "Is that Carrie?" It was awesome. That's when you know you made it. So I played a guy before. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of things that go into this, a lot of work that goes into it. What would be if you were to make your last pitch to someone wanting to come and see the show, why they should, what would you say?
They should see it because they're seeing kids who have finally come together. I think the story is marvelous because it's kids being children together and not trying to be old before their time. Focusing on each other and their problems of that moment and not trying to be something else. They're not trying to be famous. They're not trying to be geniuses. They're not trying to outdo someone on a game on a television. So they're at their purest state, if you will. The one thing is they'll come see the set and realize this year it was me and teenagers that did it. I had one adult that would come in because he's just my guy. So he'd come in for an hour at a time, and one of the dads would do that. When he had an hour, he would come in and hurry and do something. Other than that, I relied on these kids who are now learning how to do some pretty good stage building, and then I get to teach them. I want them to see how they do have the discipline to figure out another person and portray it, but not be fake. They're not fake in their real lives. And they're just trying to be an honest person telling a good story.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That looks great.
Thanks.
Okay.